From the headquarters of Telestory English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. With more than 50% of the votes from South Africa's general elections counted, the ruling African National Congress has maintained its lead. The latest results announced by the Elections Commission puts the ANC at 56%, while the opposition Democratic Alliance stands at 23%. The economic freedom fighters have moved from 8% to 9.5% of the votes. Final results are expected to be announced on Saturday. However, the Electoral Commission has announced that it will be able to declare 90% of the election results by 10 p.m. Thursday local time. The Commission's director, Sai Mamabolo, said most polling stations across the country will send their results to the National Totaling Center in the capital, Pretoria, by 6 p.m. local time.
We have captured 44.17% of all voting stations, and those have been audited and the results declared. The remaining 55% of the results we hope to conclude sometime during the course of the morning tomorrow. However, 90% of all voting stations should be declared by about 10 p.m. tonight.
The Electoral Commission has also announced the arrest of 19 individuals for allegedly voting twice. A representative of the Commission said they had been arrested in the KwaZula-Natal province. He, however, said the few incidences of double voting will not affect the final results of the election. Let's hear from our correspondent in Johannesburg, Matuba Madlaji, who has more.
So, the most interesting part of the 2019 elections here in South Africa is underway, and that is the vote counting. And so far, about 35% of the vote has been counted, and the African National Congress is leading in 8 of the 9 provinces. The Western Cape is the Democratic Alliance's turf since 2009. The ANC hasn't governed that province since 2009 when President Jacob Zuma came into office. But now the Independent Electoral Commission says all the votes will continue to be trickling into the operations center in Pretoria, where all the numbers will be consolidated, and hopefully in the next 18 hours or so it will be clear who the winner of this election is, both on a parliamentary level and the provincial level. But so far, if polls are anything to go by, the people are saying that the African National Congress will be the winner of the election with under 60% of the vote, which will be a first for the African National Congress since the dawn of democracy. So it looks like they may not get the overwhelming majority they usually get in elections since 1994. Now, another issue that the Independent Electoral Commission will be dealing with today is complaints from political parties. Apparently, there have been complaints that has to do with vote counting and the ink that's been used to show that people have voted, among issues that political parties have raised with the IEC. But the IEC has said that the integrity of the election remains intact. This does not influence the vote counting that's currently underway, but it will meet with political parties on Thursday, and we'll give a report back on how will the complaints be resolved. But so far, vote counting continues with the African National Congress in the lead with just over 35% of the vote being counted. So updates will be coming throughout the day to see how other parties like the Democratic Alliance and the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, are doing today. And lots of surprises are coming from smaller parties making strides in this very tough, heavily contested election. But we'll keep you posted on those. It's back to you, studio.
Thank you, Matuba. That was Matuba Matlaji from Johannesburg. And to talk more about the elections in South Africa, we are joined now by Richard Pithouse, a political analyst and professor of political science at the Witwatersrand University in Johannesburg. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
It's a pleasure.
So the Electoral Commission shows that only about 65% of registered voters went to cast their votes. What could be the reason for this low voter turnout?
Yes, for South Africa, that is a low vote turnout, and it's not uniformly low. Voters in the suburbs, more middle-class voters and more white voters, voted at a much, much higher rate than voters in working-class black areas, which I think most people would read as a sign of a certain degree of alienation from not just the ruling party, but from many of the possibilities on offer in the election.
So,
when elites are more motivated, that is significant.
yes. So we are seeing the first results, and one of the most important ones is that the ANC has earned about 56% of the votes, which is less than the last election, which was around 62%. Why couldn't they improve their numbers?
Well, the ANC's standing was in kind of catastrophic decline for a party that had such overwhelming support for so long during the period of Jacob Zuma's presidency. The new president of the ruling party, the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, has reinvigorated support for the party to some degree, not enough to enable a mass turnout from the party's original base, but he certainly has arrested some of that decline. But nonetheless, the decline is still, as a long-term trend, clearly in place. And the reasons for it, I don't think, are surprising. There's rampant corruption. The ANC has become increasingly repressive against people organized independently from the party and engaged in different kinds of struggles. And it's completely failed to meet its social commitments around things like employment, providing decent accommodation for the majority, and so on.
Now, Richard, another interesting result is that the EFF has increased its support from 6% to almost 10%, and they could actually be the official opposition in 3 of the provinces. So what would you say has caused their growth?
Well, that's not surprising. Polls in South Africa are notoriously unreliable, and the commentariat is notoriously representative of a kind of elite that is out of touch with most people's lives. But everyone knew the EFF was going to do much better. They have an incredibly good social media strategy, much better than any of the other parties. They have a real presence in the media. Their presence in the media vastly exceeds their support at the polls, and they're very effective in how they play the media. But also, they have spoken to some very real issues that affect millions of people. They were in the forefront of taking on the corruption around Jacob Zuma. They've since had their own corruption scandals, which have undermined their credibility to a significant degree. But they were able to speak to that moment in a way that very few other political organizations were able to. And they do speak, albeit in a way that at times is problematic. There's been gross sexism, for instance, on the part of their supporters mobilized against female journalists. But they do speak to some elements of the crisis faced by the majority of people in South Africa.
And could you give us an analysis, for example, on the youth vote? How did the youth vote in South Africa?
Well, one of the most striking things was clear before the election, which is if you take youth as 18 to 30, around half of those people didn't register to vote. So that really does indicate a very significant alienation from electoral politics. Older people in South Africa often speak about voting in terms that are more or less religious, that are filled with metaphysical claims. But clearly a significant proportion of young people don't feel like that. And there's a lot of cynicism about the political class in general and the ANC in particular. We'd have to wait until after the votes are counted to get more precise detail about how the youth voted in this election. But there clearly is that systemic alienation from the process.
Indeed, we'll wait for those results as well. Thank you very much, Richard, for your time and for your analysis on these elections.
Sure thing.
That was Richard Pithouse from South Africa, political analyst. So let's look at the facts. Land reform, corruption and unemployment were key issues in this 6th national election since apartheid ended 25 years ago. Our special contributor, Johan Abrahams, has more.
Rain came down in buckets in parts of Cape Town, South Africa this morning as people came out to vote in the national and provincial elections. Most of them saw it as a blessing on the 25 years since the first all-race democratic elections in April 1994. Ayanda Holo travelled more than 1,000 kilometers to vote in the town he grew up in. For him, it was a homecoming laced with nostalgia.
Nyanga East is not only a township and a location, but it's an institution that is filled with history and a clear contribution of sweat and tears and people sacrificing their lives to ensure that one day we enjoy a democratic vote and a democratic and a free society.
But Nyanga is also a town plagued by unemployment and rampant crime and reflects the difficult road facing South Africa despite its great democracy. Holo says if you look beyond the label of violence, it's also a place filled with hope. Those that came to vote share his optimism.
We have never ever given up hope, and we were fortunate enough because we do have a program at the Nyanga Arts Center which is called the Artisan School. The Artisan School teaches arts and culture as part of the curriculum in schools.
More than 26 million South Africans are registered to vote and 48 political parties are contesting the elections. One of those that came to vote is still seeking justice for her brother that was killed shortly after his return from Robben Island.
We still have not sort of found closure to the assassination of my late brother, Mziwonke Project. Since Pro's death, you know, we were failed by a number of institutions, starting from the TRC.
Despite the hardships, residents of Nyanga, together with fellow South Africans, remain hopeful and continue to keep the dream alive of a better tomorrow. Johan Abrams for Talisur in Nyanga, Cape Town, South Africa.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. On Monday, only on Venezuela.
Welcome back. The International Court of Justice could finally resolve the border dispute between Belize and Guatemala that has dragged on for hundreds of years. Early results of Wednesday's ICJ referendum held in Belize indicated that the yes vote won. Over 65% of Belize's electorate participated in the historic national referendum. Guatemalans have already voted in favor of going to the top UN court to settle the territorial dispute.
Yes or no. With your
In Jamaica, 11 high school students remain hospitalized after the taxi in which they were traveling went over a bridge and plunged into a river. The cab driver emerged unhurt. Some of the students had reportedly been sitting on each other's laps. The principal of the Clarendon-based school, which the crash victims attended, says the accident highlights the urgent need for a public transportation network for rural Jamaica. Trinidad and Tobago's Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi has told the parliament that 12 state attorneys alone were paid $42 million during the previous UNC administration. Earlier this week, the country's former AG, Anand Ramlogan, and an ex-UNC senator appeared in court on charges relating to a legal fees kickback scheme. The current AG told legislators that other matters are to come as police continue their corruption probe.
Put out by a politician.
According, Nigeria has started hearing a legal challenge to the victory of President Muhammadu Buhari in the elections held in February. Runner-up and candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, alleged irregularities challenging the results. The court will have 180 days to announce the verdict. Buhari is expected to be sworn in on May 29th. Rescue services have arrived at the scene where two separate attacks by Boko Haram left at least 9 people dead in northeastern Nigeria. According to survivors, gunmen in pickup trucks and motorbikes attacked a village on the outskirts of the city of Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State. In the second attack, Boko Haram fighters killed 3 farmers in a town located about 40 kilometers away. Attacks against farmers and herdsmen are common in the country's northeast region.
So over 20 motorcycles, 8 Hilux vehicles, and some fighting machines. They came in, started firing, burning all everything, including houses, markets, all economic areas of the area have been burned out. And later we confirmed about 6 days.
A solidarity brigade from Brazil's landless movement is on its way to Mozambique to help local organizations rebuild after the cyclones hit in March and April as well. Our correspondent André Vieira is traveling with them.
We are at the Florestan Fernandes School of the Brazilian Landless Workers Movement, or MST. This is where an international solidarity brigade has been preparing to travel to Mozambique.
They called on us for humanitarian assistance, and that's very good. I'm keen to get there.
Firstly, internationalism has always been a priority for our movement. And secondly, we just want to help our brothers and sisters in that country.
I'm very anxious to arrive there. There are a lot of things we can do to help. And they will also contribute to our struggle here.
13 campesinos from the MST and 6 health workers will join forces with the Mozambican organizations ADECRO and UNAC to help with the rebuilding of the country after the cyclones earlier this year. More than donations, they are taking with them their ideals.
We want to talk to the local communities there about agroecology and help strengthen their food sovereignty.
We want to bring down the artificial borders that we have created. The idea that they are a long way away, that people on the other side of the world are different. I think I'll be able to dismantle many of those ideas.
We'll get to see the reality there, all the destruction from the cyclones. It will be an incredible experience as a militant and as a human being.
The MST currently has permanent brigades in Venezuela, Haiti, Zambia and Cuba. And from that Caribbean island has come the inspiration for this gesture of solidarity.
We have learned a lot from Cuba and its international struggle. They've been bringing solidarity to many continents. They still are. And that has taught the MST that the struggle is not just for land, but for education, health, and to build these international links between people.
With the first phase of preparation completed, the brigade of health workers and campesinos will be setting off for Mozambique to put into practice the internationalism that has always been a basic principle of the landless movement. André Vieira and Sebastián Soto, Telesur, at the Florestan Fernandes School in Sao Paulo.
8 former Brazilian environment ministers have condemned President Jair Bolsonaro for backtracking on environmental protection policies.
Each one of us here in different governments of different parties and ideologies contributed to making environmental policies advance, and it is the first time we have a government that has a policy of dismantling everything that has been done and take it so far that it becomes a regression.
There aren't political banners or ideologies. It is about the idea of defending sustainable development, democracy, our society's values, and about the fact that we are convinced that the environment isn't the enemy of a country's development. But more than this, thanks to diplomacy and our technical, scientific, and political qualifications, Brazil has an enormous responsibility and contribution to the world in providing solutions to global problems and climate change.
Now we go to Peru, where more than 4,000 public servants have gone on strike in protest against salary cuts. Workers employed under the National Identification and Marital Status Registry took to the streets on Wednesday in what they called an indefinite strike. They say the government could cut their salaries by up to 40% due to non-compliance with labor laws. Venezuela's Vice President of the National Assembly, Edgar Zambrano, was arrested in Caracas. The President of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, made the announcement hours after the incident on Wednesday. Zambrano's arrest follows the NCA's decision to strip the immunity of 7 lawmakers who backed the April 30th attempted coup. Charges could be laid against them for conspiracy, treason, and rebellion. And Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza has commented on Zambrano's arrest. He tweeted that those who favor foreign intervention, support violence, and stand in solidarity with the leaders of the attempted coup will be brought to justice under the country's constitution. Venezuela's embassy in Washington, D.C. has been plunged into darkness after U.S. authorities cut power to the building. Water was also shut off. The embassy has been the location for a tense standoff between the Embassy Protection Collective and supporters of U.S.-backed opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó. As the situation escalated, one activist was arrested while others were injured trying to take food to the protesters inside the building. More stories coming up. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us again. U.S. authorities have arrested a former intelligence analyst and charged him with providing classified information on drone warfare to a journalist. Former Air Force intelligence analyst Daniel Hale is set to appear in federal court on Thursday for providing top-secret documents from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency to a reporter at The Intercept in 2014. Hale faces 5 charges, each of which carry a maximum of 10 years imprisonment. His arrest comes as the U.S. is cracking down on whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. The Chinese government has said they are fully prepared to defend their interests in the trade war with the United States. This comes as a Chinese delegation led by Vice Premier Liu He is set to hold talks in Washington to save a trade deal. U.S. President Donald Trump also threatened to increase tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods, going from 10 to 25% starting Friday. China has also responded to comments regarding its Belt and Road Initiative made by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Pompeo described the initiative as a, quote, corrupt infrastructure deal in exchange for political influence using bribe-fueled debt trap diplomacy. The Belt and Road Initiative has been a cornerstone program of Chinese President Xi Jinping and his foreign policy.
We have noted the fact that the relevant U.S. person has been singing the same old tune again over the past 2 days. He continues to discredit and attack the Belt and Road Initiative. The U.S. are not tired of saying this, but we are tired of hearing this.
Russia is celebrating the 74th anniversary of Victory Day over Nazi Germany at the end of World War II with a massive military parade on Moscow's Red Square. President Vladimir Putin led the parade of over 13,000 troops. It also showcased the latest military hardware, including a new version of the Kalashnikov assault rifle. Other major cities also held their own parades. And President Putin held a moment of silence in memory of those who lost their lives during World War II. Putin also addressed a tribune with Soviet war veterans. He assured the country he will continue to invest in its military.
We have been doing and will do everything possible to ensure high battle readiness of our armed forces, the most modern level defense potential. We will further increase the prestige of the military service, the authority of soldiers and officers, the defenders of the fatherland. At the same time, Russia is open to cooperation with all those who are ready indeed to confront terrorism, neo-Nazism and extremism.
Russians also paid respect to fallen soldiers like they do every spring since the 1980s. Volunteers visited a hilly area near St. Petersburg to carry out the digs at old battlefield sites and give the found remains a proper burial. Some 42,000 people carried out similar digs for remains of Soviet soldiers across the country. And with that, we end our news brief, but you can read more on these stories by checking our website, telestorenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And you can join us on social media. For Telestory English, I'm Carla